off at number 10, we have Vin Diesel.
When did this turn into Beautiful World? When did this turn into the most gorgeous girl in Brazil? When did this turn into I love you?
Thank you so much.
If you're a fan of the H3 podcast, you're very familiar with this Vin Diesel interview because it's such an insane interview. They use sound bites from it on basically every one of their podcasts. The interview went down in 2016 at the Comic-Con experience in Brazil. The actor sat down with Brazilian journalist Carol Marina to promote his upcoming film, XXX Return of Xander Cage. But I don't think he actually said anything about the film basically the entire interview, because the entire interview he was just talking about how the reporter looked. Basically, right in the beginning of the interview, he blurts out, quote, "God, you're so beautiful." Then he goes to talk to the crew and says, "My God, she's so beautiful, man. Am I right or wrong? Look at her. How am I supposed to do this interview? Look at this woman. She's so beautiful. Talk to me, baby." And trust me, that's literally the tip of the iceberg. It's like a 6-minute long interview. Marina talked about the experience in a YouTube video where she said she didn't know how to react to his advances, so she just basically laughed the entire time. And the fact that he was in a relationship at the time just made it even cringier and worse. Ugh. And at number 9, Dakota Johnson. You all should already know about this cultural reset because I honestly think this interview going south somewhat started the entire downfall of Ellen. Because honestly, until that incident, I had no idea so many people secretly hated her. The interview kicks off with Ellen asking about Dakota's 30th birthday party, with Ellen asking how the party was because she wasn't invited. Without a second thought, Johnson claps back, quote, "Actually no, that's not the truth, Ellen." Then going on to say how she made a point to invite Ellen after Ellen gave her a lot of for not inviting her the year before, with Dakota adding, quote, "Ask everybody, ask Jonathan, your producer." Then Ellen's producer confirmed that she actually was invited, with Ellen responding, quote, "Why didn't I go?" "Oh yeah, I had that thing, that party. It was probably Malibu. That's too far for me to go." The interview was even worse when Ellen started talking about Tig Notaro performing at the party, with Dakota saying Tig is her favorite comedian, which wasn't taken well by Ellen, and things got even more awkward. And seriously, if you can make it through the entire interview without cringing, you deserve some sort of award. And at number 8, Ben Affleck. This one isn't cringy as much as just really creepy. During a Ben Affleck interview in 2004 with French-Canadian reporter Anne-Marie Loki, where he was promoting his new movie, Jersey Girl, he was acting, gross? That's honestly the best way to put it. At one point talking about the cleavage of the interviewer and asking why she covered up for him in this interview when, quote, "Her tits are usually out." Yikes. Saying that people would, quote, "like the show better if you were topless," and, quote, "You usually show a lot more cleavage than this." There was also this really strange moment where they're like cuddling on a couch and he keeps saying really creepy stuff. You can tell the interviewer is pretty uncomfortable with the whole thing. Although when the interview started going viral again years later, she defended Affleck's actions, saying that people were taking the whole thing out of context and it was all staged. But considering the reaction to the interview was horrible, rightfully so, whoever made that decision cost him a lot of good PR. And at number 7, Steve-O. The jackass prankster and wild child Steve-O definitely lived up to his jackass reputation on Comedy Central's Too Late with Adam Carolla. And as we know, tons of celebrities will take the edge off with a drink before a late night interview. But Steve-O took it way too far and was obliterated on camera. It's hard to sum up what exactly happened in the interview because just so much happened. But right as Steve-O came out, he was slurring his words and having a hard time walking straight. Then later on, he actually tried to physically tackle Carolla, while Carolla has to fight him off. Then Steve-O broke a glass table with his foot, cutting his foot in the process. And because Carolla couldn't get Steve-O under control, he ended up being escorted out by security. And at number 6, Quentin Tarantino. There were a lot of mixed reactions to Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, with critics bringing up its regressive theme. One reporter took this even further when they asked Tarantino about Margot Robbie's character, Sharon Tate's lack of lines in the movie, framing it as a question based on gender. But Tarantino did not like that assertion, with him responding back to the question, quote, "Well, I just reject your hypothesis." Margot Robbie then tried to diffuse the tension by adding, quote, "I always look at the character and what the character is supposed to serve in the story. I think the moments that I got on screen gave an opportunity to honor Sharon and the likeness. I don't think it was intended to delve deeper. I think the tragedy ultimately was the loss of innocence. And to really show those sides of her, I think could be adequately done without speaking. I did feel like I got a lot of time to explore the character even without dialogue specifically." Halfway number 5, Cara Delevingne. This interview was a full-on train wreck. And part of the reason was probably that they referred to her as Carla Delevingne when they first introduced her. Cara was being interviewed to promote the new movie Paper Towns with Good Morning Sacramento. I think the interviewers here didn't mean offense with their questions, but Cara is clearly very sarcastic, so when she tried to be sarcastic, they took it as her being rude. And then Cara got irritated as the questions became more rude. So it was really just a downward spiral. The worst was when another guy hopped in the interview and flat out asked her why she wasn't more enthusiastic. The interview quickly ended, and one of the interviewers finishes it off by telling her, quote, "You seem a little irritated. We'll let you take a little nap and maybe get a Red Bull." Yeah, just really wasn't a good look for anybody involved. In at number 4, TJ Miller. This is another incident of a celebrity getting way too drunk for an interview, and the interviewer struggling to put on a decent interview because of it. While TJ Miller was on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert for an interview, he made a complete fool of himself. It starts off bad with Miller talking about how Colbert is his wife's favorite comedian and making things unnecessarily awkward when he says that she loves him even more as a comedian than Miller himself. Yikes. Then they talked about his terrible acceptance speech at the Critics' Choice Awards, and then TJ randomly pulls an egg out of his suit and just smashes it on his face, saying as he did it, quote, "Egg on my face, right?" The interview finished off with Miller touching Colbert with his creepy, skeleton hands. People in the comments thought Colbert was actually mad because of the interview, but I think he was more so just trying to keep things under control. You know, it's TV. Then at number 3, Charlie Sheen. Do you guys remember Charlie Sheen's winning era? I completely forgot until now, and all that cringe is coming right back. This whole interview was pretty combative from both sides, with the interviewer trying to get straight answers out of Sheen while he just kind of rambled on. The interview was in 2011 with Good Morning America, and right off the tip when the interviewer asked if Charlie is bipolar, he clapped back that he wasn't bipolar, but rather bi-winning. Then when the interviewer asked when the last time Charlie used drugs was, he responded that, quote, "I've been banging 7-gram rocks and finishing them because that's how I roll," adding that he blinked and cured his brain. Then when talking about how he's sober now, he compared his partying days to Frank Sinatra and Mick Jagger, but saying that he outpaced them and made them, quote, "just look like droopy-eyed, armless children." The interview finished off with the reporter saying that Charlie had passed the drug test before he did that interview. I don't know what that all means, but it means something. And at number 2, the Kardashians. This interview is probably one of the best things that I have ever seen, and I already know you've seen this interview as a meme even if you don't think that you have. While Barbara Walters was interviewing the Kardashian family as part of her 10 Most Fascinating People 2011 special, she just really said what we were all thinking. While talking with the family, she asked, quote, "You don't act, you don't sing, you don't dance, you don't have any, forgive me, any talent." And the Kardashians definitely did not disagree that they don't have talent, but Khloe did kind of clap back saying, quote, "But we're still entertaining people." And this interview was actually highly scrutinized, as when Walters said the Kardashians would be featured in the interviews, she said she's never heard more anger and dismay than when she had the Kardashians on, even saying that she had the cast of Jersey Shore on and no one really cared. Let me know below, who's worse, Jersey Shore or the Kardashians? It's a pretty tight race. And finally, number 1, Jesse Eisenberg.
Comedian Carrot Top?
Yes, horrible.
Well, you were like the Carrot Top of interviewers.
Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah. No, it's a good thing. It's
I'm
a good
gonna
thing.
go cry now.
No, don't cry now. Cry after the interview's over. Because otherwise I'll look like I'm responsible for it.
I don't know if this was cringy, awkward, or just some terrible flirting, but Jesse Eisenberg did an interview with Romina Puga in 2013 when he was promoting his film Now You See Me. And throughout the whole interview, he basically is just putting down the reporter and being pretty darn sassy. It starts when she asks a question about Morgan Freeman and just calls him Freeman, with Eisenberg responding, quote, "Just Freeman? Like you're on a baseball team?" I didn't really get that one, what else is she supposed to call him? I guess his full name would have definitely been better. Then when trying to do a trick, he points out that she has a lot written on her hand. We're assuming notes for the interview. Then he starts talking about how Carrot Top is an awful comedian, then saying that she's the Carrot Top of interviewers. She responded jokingly saying that she was gonna cry. Then he told her to wait till after the interview to cry, because then he'd be responsible. If you saw this one, let me know what you think about it below. I'm really confused on where to take it. Was it rude? Was it flirty? Because there was some kind of flirtatious tensions, but definitely cringy, that is for sure.
Starting us off at number 10, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. I mean, this is the interview which inspired the list in the first place, and if you've yet to watch it, Well, there's a lot to unravel, that's for sure. Some of the biggest headlines that have stood out from this interview include concerns that the royal family had regarding how dark Meghan and Harry's firstborn, Archie's skin color would be. On top of this, both Harry and Meghan spoke on the struggles of being a part of the royal family, which from the looks of it, doesn't appear to be much of a family at all. According to them, there's the family and then the people actually running the entire thing, in which they called it the institution. Meghan also spoke of a very tough time for her in which her mental health was significantly declining. Upon her asking to leave and get help, the institution denied. When she spoke with HR, they showed her compassion, but claimed because she wasn't a paid employee of the institution, they couldn't be much help. Meghan also touched on the headlines falsely accusing her of making her sister-in-law, Kate Middleton, cry, in which she set the record straight, saying Kate made her cry, but later referring to her as a good person. On to number 9, Donald Trump predicts his presidency. Normally The Simpsons is the show predicting how things are going to go down in the future, but it seems this time around Oprah was right on the money. Well, it was a mix of Oprah and former President Donald Trump, who at the time was just known as Donald Trump, wealthy businessman. At the time, Trump was appearing on the show to promote his new book and just talk about life or business in general as a multi-millionaire in the 80s. However, things went from business to politics real quick, as Trump wasn't one to shy away from how he felt about foreign policy. After the two had a quick conversation about how, if he was ever president, he would charge a lot of foreign taxes to favor America. Oprah went on to say, I quote, "This sounds like political presidential talk to me. I know people have talked to you about whether or not you want to run. Would you ever?" Trump's reply, "Probably not, but I do get tired of seeing the country get ripped off. I just don't think I have the inclination to do it. If it got so bad, I would never want to rule it out totally, because I really am tired of seeing what's happening with this country. We're really making other people live like kings, and we're not. I think I'd win. I'll tell you what, I wouldn't go in to lose." Well, there's that. On to number 8, the Forsyth County interview. Known for breaking down barriers and really pushing things to the limit, Oprah decided after being on air for just 5 months to head down to Forsyth County, Georgia to interview the locals. Although the majority of the time on her show, Oprah would interview guests in her studio, this time she decided to take the interview to the people. Forsyth County, historically known since the early 1900s for being incredibly racist, didn't have a single black resident for over 75 years when Oprah went to visit the all-white population. As you can imagine, the majority of those that Oprah had the opportunity to interview didn't have such nice things to say. For the most part, the interview saw Oprah asking the locals questions, and them responding with racist comments, ignorant beliefs, and just completely illogical reasoning. Although there were a few who showed they were of a much more progressive mindset, it seems the majority of those living in Forsyth County didn't want anyone living there unless they were a straight white person. For the safety of both herself and the crew, Oprah and the team left before sundown, but the interview significantly highlighted how much racism was still alive at the time. Not to say it no longer exists, but given back then the only form of media you had was TV, radio, and the newspaper, while Oprah was doing the work most people weren't. At number 7, Michael Jackson. One of Oprah's biggest interviews to date, if not the biggest one. Back in 1993, Oprah Winfrey traveled to Michael Jackson's Neverland Ranch to interview the King of Pop, his first time being interviewed in 14 years. To no surprise, this led to Oprah getting 90 million viewers tuning in to hear what Jackson had to say. Although at the time the allegations made against MJ had not yet come to light, there were plenty of other controversies and speculation surrounding his life at the time. For example, a very common misconception was that he bleached his skin to appear whiter. There were also claims that he would sleep in a hyperbaric chamber to keep his appearance youthful. During the interview, Jackson would speak on the rumors of his sleeping regime, in which he admitted the photos circulating of him checking the chamber were actually for his charity. He would also reveal to the world the reason for his skin appearing to be more white than when he was a kid, due to his skin condition vitiligo, saying the condition was in his family. On to number 6, Mike Sisco. Not so much a celebrity like a lot of the others featured on here, Sisco was simply a gay man from West Virginia who was publicly shamed for swimming in a public pool after testing positive for AIDS. The interview, occurring back in 1987, was right around the height of the AIDS epidemic, although by 1987 the CDC had already determined you couldn't get infected through casual contact, food, water, air, or surfaces. Unfortunately for a lot of people, that didn't matter, and Sisco was publicly shamed, making front page news and eventually appearing on Oprah's show. During the interview, Oprah spoke with other locals, as well as the town's mayor, who felt it was his duty to close the pool and tell the newspaper to run the story that an AIDS patient had been in the pool. Some guests who were locals of the town showed support for Sisco, while others blamed him. Dr. Woodrow Myers, a public health official from Indiana, was also on, and explained that although he understands the general public's fear, facts are what are most important. At number 5, Jane Elliott. The beauty of this interview is that it was actually a social experiment done and the audience had no idea. Elliott rose to prominence after introducing the blue eyes, brown eyes experiment into her classrooms, literally the day after Martin Luther King was assassinated. In an effort to prove that racism is taught, Elliott would separate those with blue eyes from the rest of the class and treat them in a less friendly way compared to their brown-eyed counterparts. If you had green eyes like me, well, they'd probably just kill you. I'm just kidding. At the end of the day, the experiment was done to teach these kids how racism is taught and learned, not something you're just born with. Going back to Oprah, while inviting Jane onto her show, they decided to try the experiment without members of the audience knowing. Those with blue eyes were pulled out of line and treated poorly, while those with brown eyes were given food, coffee, and even the opportunity to skip the line to get into the Oprah show. Airing in 1992, the episode really highlighted what racism is like, and how easy it was for people to give into the idea of discrimination so long as it benefits them. Let's just say for the 90s, this type of thing was unheard of, and was a huge deal in regards to starting the conversation that no one was willing to have. At number 4, Mike Tyson. One of the baddest men on the planet opened up, and it was all thanks to Oprah. In 2009, Tyson appeared on the show and spoke with Oprah about his time in prison, the loss of his daughter to a freak accident, and of course his infamous fight against former heavyweight champ Evander Holyfield. The interesting thing about this interview is that it was split into 2 parts. The first part saw Tyson just tell all, speak on the things previously mentioned, and really show the world a softer, different side of him. The second part of the interview actually saw Tyson and Holyfield sit down face to face for the first time since their fight and put everything past them, with Tyson apologizing, extending his hand, and Holyfield shaking it, officially burying the hatchet. Number 3, Kim Kardashian. This was the tell-all interview in which Oprah and Kim spoke about the tape, which many credit for giving Kim the fame she has today. For those of you unaware, Kim and her former boyfriend and rapper Ray J made a little intimate video and then sold it for a lot of money. I mean, it got leaked. Sources say Kris Jenner purposely put it out. Both Kim and Kris denied this, but I mean, really, who knows? All in all, Kim would speak on the tape itself, as well as her 72-day marriage to former NBA player Kris Humphries. Although the tape was leaked or released in 2007, the interview with Oprah didn't occur until 2012. By then, Kim K was a household name, and people wanted answers. Oprah was the one giving it to them, as Kim told the cameras all they wanted to know and plenty more. Number 2, Ellen DeGeneres. Before Ellen was Ellen, she was just a young up-and-coming comedian trying to make a name for herself. As the years have gone on, she's been able to build herself quite the empire. Not as big as Oprah's, but still pretty damn big. However, prior to the fame and fortune, Ellen was once a guest on Oprah's show and gave quite an amazing interview. Well, at this point, Ellen was a big deal and had a massive show on TV called The Ellen Show, in which she played a somewhat fictional character of herself. One episode in particular, the puppy episode, saw Ellen's character actually come out as gay. There were rumors of this leading up to the episode's premiere, and just weeks prior, Ellen was featured on the front of Time magazine with the headline, "Yep, I'm gay." That in itself was big news, but when Ellen appeared on Oprah's TV show and openly spoke about her sexuality and the struggles she's faced because of it on primetime TV, well, it was a game changer. They just so happened to do the interview the same day the episode Puppy Love dropped on TV as well. At number 1, Tom Cruise. I mean, I really don't need to get into it, but this will always be my all-time favorite moment, potentially in the history of TV. So many TV shows and movies have either parodied this or outright made fun of it because of how funny and just wildly crazy the whole situation was. At the height of their very public relationship, Tom Cruise appeared on Oprah's show to likely talk about his career in movies, but the conversation quickly shifted to Katie and his love for her. At the sound of her name, Cruise is seen jumping up and down on the couch, grabbing Oprah's hands, and letting the world know how much he loves Katie Holmes. Just the behavior in general was so unlike Cruise. Every time I watch the clip on YouTube, I'm literally in tears. Like, I was laughing about it earlier today watching it. Between the laughs and the couch jumping, this interview will likely go down in history as one of the most memorable of all time, simply for how wild Cruise was acting the entire time.
And at number 10, Megan Fox. While Megan Fox was on the Jimmy Kimmel Show in 2009, she spoke about her time working with Michael Bay before she was cast in Transformers. Megan said that she got the role when she was only 15, so she wasn't able to hold a drink or sit at the bar. So director Michael Bay came up with another plan and had her dress up in a Stars and Stripes bikini, a red cowboy hat, and 6-inch heels to dance underneath a waterfall and get, quote, soaking wet. With Megan clearly insinuating it was very inappropriate. Fox added, quote, "That's sort of a microcosm of how Bay's mind works." But then Jimmy Kimmel took the uncomfortability up a notch and replied, quote, "Well, that's really a microcosm of how all our minds work. Some of us have the decency to repress those thoughts and pretend that they don't exist." At the time, nobody batted an eye at the strange response, but when the clip resurfaced 11 years later, fans demanded an apology from Kimmel. And at number 9, Ben Affleck. This one is so cringy, I honestly wish I never knew about it in the first place. But now, I'm here telling you, so there's that. During an interview in 2004 with French-Canadian reporter Anne-Marie Loki, Affleck was promoting his new movie, Jersey Girl, but he was acting incredibly creepy and gross, talking about how the reporter looked and cuddling her. At one point he asked why she covered up for him in this interview when, quote, "her tits are usually out," saying that people would, quote, "like the show better if you did it topless," and saying she usually shows a lot more cleavage than this. At first, people thought he was just like drunk, but it still didn't excuse the behavior. When the clip went viral years later, the reporter actually defended Affleck's actions, saying the interview was taken out of context and she never actually felt uncomfortable. But personally, I'll never look at him the same way again. And at number 8, David Letterman. David Letterman had the hottest late night show on TV for many years during his run, and he was beloved by fans. But now that some of his interviews are decades old, they are aging very poorly. It's not just 1 or 2 interviews, it seems like most of them were problematic in some way. During one interview with Uma Thurman, he started asking about her dating life and the age of men that she dates. Then he said his own age and asked if Uma would date someone his age, implying he wanted to go on a date with her. In another interview with Jennifer Aniston, he stopped mid-conversation to grab a piece of her hair in his mouth and suck on it. Then there's a more recent interview with Lindsay Lohan where he kept asking her about her rehab, even though she didn't want to answer. At one point, Lohan started tearing up out of frustration. This is truly the tip of the iceberg, and if you want to hear more on just Letterman specifically, we do have a list just on him. And at number 7, Andy Dick. Comedian Andy Dick got incredibly inappropriate while on Jimmy Kimmel Live and was kicked off the show as a result. Dick was on the show the same time as Ivanka Trump, the famous daughter of Donald Trump. Throughout the interview, Andy got incredibly inappropriate with Ivanka, touching her leg out of nowhere multiple times, and clearly coming on to her. After Andy was getting too handsy, Kimmel decided to get his security to kick Andy off the show live on air. And because this happened mid-interview, the whole thing was caught on camera. The whole thing seemed to be somewhat of a joke, but it was clear that Andy went way too far. And at number 6, Anne Hathaway. After Anne starred as Catwoman in The Dark Knight Rises in 2012, she was asked a long string of questions about her physique and workout routine to prepare for the film. While speaking to extra reporter Jerry Penacoli, he asked about her fitness regime to prepare for the movie, noting she would need to be in perfect shape. She replied, quote, "It wasn't about being in perfect shape, it was about being able to do the stunts and fighting perfectly." He then started asking about the form-fitting costume that she wore while playing the role and what it was like to wear. She replied, making a joke that it didn't feel like sweatpants. Then she shifted attention to Christian Bale's costume because he had to wear ears with his as well. The reporter then asked about her diet, which she brushed off, saying that it was boring. When he kept prying and asked, quote, "Are you trying to lose weight? What's the deal, man? You look great." Adding, "No, seriously, we have to talk about this. What do you want? Are you trying to fit into a cat suit?" And I just love her so much more after that interview. Halfway number 5, Scarlett Johansson. Scarlett was interviewed by none other than Jerry Penacoli while promoting Black Widow. For a refresher, he was the same person that interviewed Anne Hathaway in the last point, so this one's gonna be pretty similar. This interview also took place in 2012 while Johansson was taking questions with co-star Jeremy Renner. The reporter asked if she wore underwear beneath her Black Widow costume, and she replied, quote, "You're like the 5th person that's asked me that today. What's going on? Since when do people start asking each other in interviews about their underwear?" The reporter then went on to explain that fans are wondering because the costume in the movie was so skin tight. Johansson then replied, quote, "I'll leave it up to your imagination. Whatever you feel like I should be wearing or not wearing under that costume." And at number 3, Taylor Swift. Back in 2015, Taylor Swift had a reputation for dating tons of celebrities. This reputation then led a reporter to ask Taylor a very inappropriate question while on the red carpet. At the 2015 Grammy, she was walking down the red carpet showing off her outfit. While she was speaking with Entertainment Tonight, they showed her dress and started talking about her outfit. The reporter then said she wanted a close-up of Taylor's legs, then added, quote, "As I was telling you ahead of time, you're going to walk home with maybe more than just a trophy tonight, I think lots of men." Taylor looked in shock for a moment, thinking about the strange question she was just asked, then replied, quote, "I'm not going to walk home with any men tonight, I'm going to hang out with my friends, then go home to my cats. Men get me in trouble." And finally, number 1, Rashida Jones. This is one that didn't have any bad intention behind it, but it's still pretty hard to watch. While Rashida was walking down the red carpet during the 2015 Screen Actors Guild Awards, she was doing quick interviews with tons of media outlets. During one interview with TNT, Rashida was happily talking about her gorgeous gown and who made the stunning piece. But then things got cringy when the interviewer asked Rashida about her tan, saying that the actress looked like she just came back from a tropical vacation and had a beautiful glow. Obviously, this reporter didn't know that Rashida was biracial, being half black and half white, and that her tan was actually just her skin color. So Rashida replied, quote, "You know, I'm ethnic," to which the reporter tried to awkwardly laugh it off. And at number 9, Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise's reputation has taken a dive for many reasons over the years, but one moment that really shocked fans was his interview with Matt Lauer. In the interview, his temper changes dramatically, showing the world that Cruz has a very short fuse. In the 2005 interview, Lauer asked Cruz about his comments criticizing Brooke Shields for taking antidepressants for her postpartum depression. Cruz kept going on that he doesn't agree with her decision, and when asked why, he added, quote, "You don't know the history of psychiatry, I do," along with getting more combative as the conversation went on. That, in part with his sketchy divorce from Katie Holmes, made public opinion of him tank. And at number 8, John Mayer. John Mayer's 2010 interview with Playboy rubbed a lot of people the wrong way because of how crass and just straight up gross that it was. In the interview, he got very candid about his personal life, probably too much so. He spoke about his relationship with Jessica Simpson and Jennifer Aniston, and revealed that he and Simpson had an incredibly physical relationship, and she was like a drug to him. He even spoke about his fan base and made some strange comments about the fact that a large part of it is black women. He then went on to say he only likes to sleep with white women, in probably the worst language I have ever heard. This interview was seriously so raunchy I can't even include one single quote in this video. And at number 7, the Chainsmokers. This DJ duo did a 2016 interview with Billboard where they tried to give off the impression that they are crazy party boys, but fans just found it super cringy. In the interview, the pair wanted to make it clear that they partied hard each night and enjoyed sleeping with their groupies, even though they both had girlfriends at the time. In the interview, the men said that even before they were famous, getting girls was always their top priority. A direct quote said, like, "Why am I trying to make all this money? I wanted to hook up with hotter girls. I had to date a model." After the interview, the pair were labeled as D-bags with seriously cocky attitudes. After the backlash, the pair went on somewhat of an apology tour and tried to get the public to see that they are not bad guys, they were just joking around. Some joke. And at number 6, Paula Abdul. Paula Abdul had a great public reputation because of her role as a judge on American Idol, but that good reputation went down the pipes after this eyebrow-raising interview. In 2007, she was live on air with Fox to talk about the upcoming season of Idol, but it was derailed almost instantly. In the interview, Paula was nothing like the woman we see on Idol and honestly seemed very drunk. She was slurring her words, behaving erratically, and just acting like a basket case. Paula later denied she was drunk, and a spokesperson claimed that there was a sound issue during the segment. 2 years later, the singer failed to renew her contract with American Idol and soon disappeared into obscurity. Halfway number 5, Tom Hiddleston. Tom Hiddleston is known in the movie world for his roles as Loki and Thor, but once he started dating Taylor Swift, he was exposed to a whole other fan base that was way wilder than he could have ever expected. Shortly after the split, Tom did an interview with GQ where he was asked about the relationship, and surprisingly he answered the questions in a lot of detail. Some even thought it was maybe too much detail. He spoke about the infamous I Heart Taylor Swift shirt he wore at the beach, saying he wanted to cover up a cut, and that was the only shirt he could find. Then he spoke about the attention surrounding the relationship, saying he was totally shocked with the amount of press the relationship received. It's rumored that he even showed up to the reporter's door at 6 a.m. to clarify some things he said in the interview. He only said kind things about Taylor in the interview, but some felt he might have just been afraid of upsetting her fan base. And at number 4, Katherine Heigl. Katherine Heigl was blacklisted from Hollywood after she called out the director of the hit comedy Knocked Up. In a now infamous Vanity Fair interview from 2008, Katherine Heigl slammed director Judd Apatow and called the movie, quote, a little sexist. She went on to talk trash about her character in the film, adding, quote, it paints the woman as shrews, as humorless and uptight, and it paints the men as lovable, goofy, fun-loving guys. This incident, along with some other drama with the Grey's Anatomy production, put a huge axe in her career and forced her to apologize. Many years later, Heigl spoke to the Washington Post about being branded as difficult after the comments and blasted the idea that a different opinion made her difficult. She was blacklisted from the industry for a few years, but is back working again and has admitted her past mistakes. And at number 3, Miles Teller. Miles Teller burst onto the Hollywood scene in Damien Chazelle's 2014 Whiplash, which got plenty of critical acclaim. He even got a role in the Divergent series, which got him a lot more exposure. But his career really hit a snag because of a string of really bad interviews. In a 2014 interview with the New York Times, Teller said, quote, I feel like a lot of actors of my generation are not proper actors. I want to break out of that whole group of actors in their early 20s and really start to put stuff down that lets you know I take this seriously. He even trashed John Cusack after the reporter compared the two of them. Teller said they are similar in some ways, but quote, I don't want his career. In an interview with Esquire later in 2015, he came off even worse. In this interview, he made the writer cut his food for him and said he is better looking than the public thinks he is. The writer even scorned him in the piece, which she straight up called him a D-bag. And at number 2, Jesse Eisenberg. Jesse Eisenberg is one of those actors that you hope you never have to interview because he seems to make things as difficult as possible. This was the case in 2013 when he did a Univision interview with Romina Puga. Throughout the whole interview, he basically is just putting down the reporter and being pretty darn sassy. It starts when she asked a question about Morgan Freeman and just referred to him as Freeman. Eisenberg replied, quote, "Just Freeman, like you're on a basketball team?" clearly making fun of her. Then when trying to do a trick, he points out that she has a lot written on her hand, we're assuming notes for the interview. Then he starts talking about how Carrot Top is an awful comedian, then saying that she's the Carrot Top of reporters. She responded jokingly that she was gonna cry, then he told her to wait to cry till after the interview. Some think it was all just terrible flirting, but either way, it was pretty cruel. And finally, number 1, Paris Hilton. In this awkward ABC interview from 2011, the interviewer came right out of the gate asking Paris about her unimpressive TV show ratings and how she felt about the Kardashians' rise to fame. Clearly, Paris was not happy with the line of questions and still felt that she was on top, even though the ratings did not reflect this. When asked if Paris felt that Kim was overshadowing her, Paris simply said no. He also asked if her show's low ratings affected her, to which she also replied no. Then before he could even get into the third question, Paris's team stopped the interview and she walked off. At that time, it seemed like the interviewer was saying what we were all thinking, but Paris just didn't want to hear it.
Number 10. Why he went public. Anderson Cooper asked a question that had seemingly been on everyone's lips for quite some time. He brought up the fact that Harry and Meghan stepped back from their senior royal roles in January of 2020 and relocated to North America, then inked a deal with Netflix and gave a tell-all interview to Oprah Winfrey just months later. Much to everyone's confusion, since it seemed like they wanted to live a private life and give up their royal titles. Since the Megxit, the couple has continued to use the Royal Duke and Duchess of Sussex titles that they received from the Queen on their 2018 wedding day, and Cooper asked, "Why not renounce your titles as Duke and Duchess?" In response, Harry said, "And what difference would that make?" Then Cooper said, "One of the criticisms that you've received is that, okay fine, you want to move to California, you want to step back from the institutional role. Why be so public? Why reveal conversations you've had with your father or your brother? You say you've tried to do this privately." Harry said, "And every single time I've tried to do it privately, there have been briefings and leakages and planting of stories against me and my wife. You know, the family motto is never complain, never explain, but it's just a motto. It doesn't really hold." To this day, many have pointed out that Harry has neglected to specify exactly which stories were leaked and planted against them, so his allegation continues to be very vague without anything solid to back it up. Number 9. Pushed to the limit. The fact that Harry has been so outspoken about the private details of his relationship with William just goes to show you how far their rift has gone, to the point where it feels irreparable. In his latest media appearance, Harry spoke to Anderson Cooper on 60 Minutes and explained why he felt compelled to speak publicly about life within the royal family. He spoke about the time when he and Meghan stepped down from their senior duties in March of 2020, and explained that he'd sent countless emails and letters and messages over the 6 years, but he was not able to speak with his family privately. He also talked about the dirty game that his family would play, and said they will feed or have a conversation with the correspondent, and that correspondent will literally be spoon-fed information and write the story. Harry went on to say, "So when we're being told for the last 6 years we can't put a statement out to protect you, but you do it for the other members of the family, there comes a point when silence is betrayal." However, he did admit to wanting his father and brother back, even though he says they've shown absolutely no willingness to reconcile. So at this point, it would be a miracle if they ever speak to each other again. Number 8. His family was complicit. During his interview with 60 Minutes, Prince Harry said that he was incredibly naive about how the British press would treat his relationship with Meghan. He also noted the relationship itself had given him a new awareness, saying what Meghan had to go through was similar in some part to what Kate and what Camilla went through, although with very different circumstances. He then went on to say, "But then you add in the race element, which was what the British press jumped on straight away. I went into this incredibly naive. I had no idea that the press was so bigoted. Hell, I was probably bigoted before the relationship with Meghan." Anderson Cooper then asked him if he thinks that he was bigoted before he saw Meghan, to which he said, "I don't know, put it this way, I didn't see what I now see." He then turns his attention to the family and says, "At that time, I didn't fully understand how much or how complicit the family were in that pain and suffering that was happening to my wife. And the one group of people that could have helped or could have stopped this from happening were the very people that were encouraging it to happen, and I sit here now in front of you asking for a family, not an institution. I want a family, and I understand that might be hard for them to separate the two, but to me, everything that I've witnessed and experienced over the years, there has to be a separation. Number 7, they feared for their lives. Prince Harry came out with even more accusations against his family and claimed that they had gotten into bed with the devil by cooperating with the media, and said that he could not remain silent in the face of distortions of the truth. He also said that he felt very at peace with his life in California and had never been happier, despite fleeing his home country with Meghan and his son Archie. Harry said that Megxit was a necessity because at that time they were fearing for their lives after constant attacks from the British press. He cited a recent controversial article by Sun columnist Jeremy Clarkson, who wrote that he wanted to see Meghan be paraded through the streets naked and pelted with excrement. That article caused near universal condemnation, and Harry insisted that it was a perfect example of what he was talking about. He said, "What he said was horrific and is hurtful and cruel towards my wife, but it also encourages other people around the UK and around the world, men particularly, to go and think that's acceptable to treat women that way. To use my stepmother's words recently as well, there is a global pandemic of violence against women." So clearly he wanted to make that point that hateful articles and headlines have real life consequences, and that's why he felt that Meghan was actually being threatened. Number 6, wanting to reconcile. Although he insisted that he is now happy with his life away from his family, Harry claimed that he does in fact love his brother and father and wanted to reconcile with them. He said that he 100% believed that forgiveness could really happen, but he also said that now the ball is in their court, saying, "I would like to get my father back. I would like to have my brother back." Anderson Cooper then asked him how he could expect to reconcile with them since he's taken a flamethrower to family bridges, to which Harry said, "Well, they've shown absolutely no willingness to reconcile up until this point, and I'm not sure how honesty is burning bridges." According to Harry, that silence would only allow negative patterns to continue. He said, "So I don't know how staying silent is ever gonna make things better. That's genuinely what I believe." Later in the clip, Cooper asked him if he could see a day where he would return to being a full-time member of the royal family, to which he simply said no. He then said, "But it never needed to be this way. I want a family, not an institution." In Harry and Meghan's Netflix documentary, he also confessed that he misses the family gatherings at certain times of the year, and he also misses seeing his friends. He explained that he's lost certain friends now, which just speaks to how much he really sacrificed in the process of breaking away from the royal family. Number 5, they were villainized. At another point in the interview, Harry referred to the way that he and Meghan were treated by the royal family. Instead of righting the wrongs that were happening and coming out in defense of the couple, Harry said that his family felt as though it was better to keep the narrative going that they were villains. He claims that the British press was also an antagonist in their relationship that he had with the rest of the family, as the tabloids wanted to create as much conflict as possible. And according to him, that's part of the reason why William turned against Meghan, because he consistently read the negative stories about her. He said, "The saddest part of that is certain members of my family and the people that work for them are complicit in that conflict. So much of the relationship between me and William and the way it played out was because of the narrative, or the distorted narrative that was being pushed through the British press, and some people within his office that were feeding him utter nonsense." Harry also went on Good Morning America and said that the press pitched William and Kate against Meghan. He said that there's always been competition between him and his brother, but it was exacerbated by media attention. He went on to say they always pitched us against each other. They pitched Kate and Meghan against each other, and when he was asked if he thought this made the two women go against each other, he said yes without question. Number 4, he believed Diana faked her death. Another shocking revelation from his 60 Minutes interview came when Prince Harry said that he and his older brother believed for many years that their mother, the late Princess Diana, may have faked her death and would one day return to their lives. Diana was killed in a car crash in Paris in August of 1997 when Harry was 12 and William was 15. Over the years, she was a topic of fascination and scrutiny for the British tabloids and also the media outlets around the world. Sadly, she was being hounded by paparazzi in the moments before her death. Quoting an extract from his memoir, Spare, Anderson Cooper said, "You write in the book, you say, I'd often say to myself first thing in the morning, maybe this is the day. Maybe this is the day that she's going to reappear." To which Harry said, "I just refused to accept that she was gone. I had huge amounts of hope." He said that he once thought maybe this is all part of a plan and his mother would eventually reappear into his life. Interestingly enough, he said that he held on to the belief that Diana was still alive until he was an adult. At 23, he visited Paris for the first time and asked a taxi driver to take him through the same tunnel where his mother was killed. Apparently, he even asked the driver to drive at the same speed that she was traveling at before her death, because he felt that he needed to take this journey and ride the same route. If anything, that was one of the saddest moments in the interview. Number 3, he never liked Camilla. In a shocking part of the interview, Prince Harry accused Camilla, the Queen Consort, of leaking stories about the family to the British media, all as a part of her campaign to rehabilitate her image. He also claimed that both he and his brother Prince William had asked the king not to marry her. He said, "We didn't think it was necessary. We thought that it was gonna cause more harm than good, and that if he was now with this person, that surely that would be enough." But then both of them eventually came around to the idea because they wanted their father to be happy, and they saw how happy he was with her. Camilla did go on to marry Charles in 2005, 8 years after the death of Diana, but it's common knowledge that the two of them had been involved romantically on and off for decades, and Diana had once famously referred to Camilla as the third person in their marriage. Because of that, her reputation was in tatters. Harry said this is why Camilla was so dangerous, because she needed to rehabilitate her image, seeing as she's been cast as the villain by the press for her part in the collapse of his parents' marriage. He said that made her dangerous because of the connections that she was forging within the British press, and there was open willingness on both sides to trade information. And with a family built on hierarchy, and with her on the way being to Queen Consort, there was gonna be people or bodies left in the street because of that. Number 2, he feels trapped. During his interview on Good Morning America, Harry spoke about his frustration with the fact that he can't ever get out of the royal family. He said that in the end, the palace had allowed them no compromise over their half-in, half-out hybrid plan to move to Canada while also still serving the crown. Apparently, this is what led to the Megxit crisis in 2020. He said, "This was really sad because I still to this day believe that this was entirely possible." The interviewer then said, "There are going to be people who say, why don't they either be in or get out? Because if you get out, there's no hypocrisy." To which Harry responded by saying, "I can't ever get out, and I'm incredibly aware of my position. I'm incredibly grateful for the life that I've had and continue to live, but there's no version of me ever able to get out of this. I was stunned that my family would allow security to be taken away, especially at the most vulnerable point for us." When he was asked about critics who say that he sold out his family, he says that the only way he could protect his family was to correct mistruths and write about the truth in one place, even though he did admit that writing the book in the first place was feeding the beast anyway. To be fair, he did say that he takes some kind of responsibility for his role in the breakdown of his relationship with his brother, but he then said, "What people don't know is the efforts that I've gone to resolve this rift privately." And coming in at number 1, William and Kate never liked Meghan. Over the weekend, Harry also spoke to ITV's Tom Bradby and addressed the tension in the family when he started seeing his now wife. When he told William and Kate about his relationship with Meghan, he said, "There was a lot of stereotyping that was happening, that I was guilty of as well, at the beginning, around her being an American actress. Unfortunately, that stereotype was causing a bit of a barrier to them to introduce or welcome her in." Bradby then asked, "The impression is that from the get-go they didn't get on. Fair?" To which Harry agreed and then claimed that that was for a lot of different reasons, saying that "I had to put a lot of hope into the idea that, you know, it would be William and Kate and me and whoever. I thought the four of us would bring me and William closer together. We could go out and do work together, which I did a lot of as a third wheel to them, which was fun at times, but also I guess slightly awkward at times as well." He wanted to say that he didn't think they were ever expecting him to get into a relationship with someone like Meghan, who had a very successful career. According to Harry, this was the root of them not understanding each other, and at one point William even said that it would be difficult to marry her for this reason. Number 10, Robert Downey Jr. In 2015, during the publicity tour for Avengers: Age of Ultron, the actor walked out of an interview after being confronted about his past. He was speaking to Channel 4's Krishnan Guru Murthy, who said, "The reason I'm asking you about your past is you've talked in other interviews about your relationship with your father and the role in all of that of the dark periods you went through. I just wondered whether you're free of all that." The actor became noticeably irritated and cut him off, saying, "What are we doing? Are we promoting a movie?" He then looked at someone behind the camera and just walked out. The tension during the interview was so extreme that you could actually tell Robert Downey Jr. wanted to explode, but instead he just took himself out of the situation. Later, he spoke to Howard Stern and said that he didn't have any regrets about walking out of the interview. Quote, "I just wish I'd left sooner. What I have to do in the future is give myself permission to say that is more than likely a parasite and I need to distance myself from this clown. Otherwise, otherwise I'm probably going to put hands on somebody. And then there's a real story. So he was clearly more than a little frustrated with that line of questioning. Number 9. Tom Hardy. Back in 2015, the British actor became a viral sensation after he shut down a reporter's inquiry into his sexuality during a press conference at the Toronto International Film Festival. While the first 28 minutes of the press conference were fairly uneventful, things took a turn when a reporter from an LGBT news outlet asked Tom if it was hard for celebrities to talk to the media about their sexuality. He was clearly taken aback by the question, and in response he asked, "Are you asking me about my sexuality?" To which the reporter says yes. Tom was clearly not happy with the question and looked annoyed. He said, "Why?" before ending the interaction with a blunt "thank you." Days later, the actor sat down with EW and reflected on the moment. He said, "That really annoyed me. It was just the inelegance of being asked in a room full of people." Tom said that he felt the question was asked only to elicit a salacious response. Quote, "Now I'm happy to have a conversation, a discussion, at a reasonable time about anything. I'm confident in my own sexuality, and I'm also confident in my own being, and talking about any issue you want to talk about, but there is a time and a place for that." Number 8. Rashida Jones. When the actress walked the Screen Actors Guild Awards red carpet in 2015, she was probably not expecting to walk into a very awkward interview that, let's face it, was a little problematic. She was greeted by TNT correspondent Danielle Dembski, who decided to break the ice by complimenting her dress and her glowing skin. She said, "You look amazing, gorgeous. You look like you've just come off of an island or something. You're very tan, very tropical." Rashida was taken aback for a second, paused and said, "I mean, you know, I'm ethnic." If you didn't know, Rashida is the daughter of Quincy Jones, the legendary African-American record producer, and Peggy Lipton, a white actress and former model. Rashida has spoken about her mixed ethnicity many times, especially that interview she did with her sister Khadida for Glamour in 2005, where they discussed their very different experiences of growing up biracial. To be fair, red carpet reporters have to interview many celebrities during award show season, so of course they wouldn't know everything about everyone that they encounter. But for many people, the interview reflected the uncomfortable base level assumption that celebrities are white, and if they happen to be slightly darker, that must mean that they've been on a recent tropical vacation. Very rarely do people consider that they might be another ethnicity. Number 7. Quentin Tarantino. During a press conference for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, a female journalist asked the legendary director something that seemed to set him off. She brought up Margot Robbie's character Sharon Tate and inquired about her lack of lines in the film. She said, "Quentin, you've put Margot Robbie, a very talented actress, in your films. She was with Leonardo DiCaprio in Wolf of Wall Street. She was in I, Tonya, and yet you haven't given her many lines in this movie. I'm guessing that was a very deliberate choice on your part, and I was just wondering why that was. Why don't we hear her speaking very much?" The question would have been an easy one to answer, as there were so many characters in the film, and naturally not all of them could get the same amount of screen time. But Quentin snapped back and refused to answer. He said, "Well, I just reject your hypotheses." Margot seemed to save the moment and jumped right in with a great response about her character, but it's clear that Quentin doesn't take criticism well at all. Most people remember the car crash interview with Krishnan Guru Murthy in 2013, where he ended up verbally berating the British journalist just for suggesting that there's a link between violence on screen and in real life. Number 6. Anne Hathaway. In 2012, the actress was a guest on the Today Show, where she was asked an extremely uncomfortable and inappropriate question. At the time, she was on a press tour for Les Miserables, and she was also dealing with a horrifying incident where a photographer crouched down as she got out of a car and took a photo of the view of her skirt. That photo was then sold to tabloid magazines and circulated around the press. But when Hathaway appeared on the show, not only did Matt Lauer bring up the incident, but he also framed it as her fault. He started off the interview by saying, "Nice to see you, seen a lot of you lately," and then tries to play it off like he's talking about her press tour for the film. But Lauer is having none of it. He says, "Let's just get it out of the way. You had a little wardrobe malfunction the other night. What's the lesson learned from something like that? Other than you keep smiling, which you always do." But Anne's response was remarkably graceful. She shut him down by saying, "It was obviously an unfortunate incident. I'm sorry that we live in a culture that commodifies the sexuality of unwilling participants," which brings us back to Les Mis. And just like that, she was able to turn the conversation back onto her movie. Number 7. Jesse Eisenberg. While promoting his 2013 movie Now You See Me, the actor took part in a genuinely uncomfortable interview. He spoke to an entertainment reporter, Romina Puga, and things got awkward in a hurry. The interview started off rough when Romina referred to Jesse's co-star Morgan Freeman as just Freeman, but in response the actor seemed to insult her multiple times. He said, "You are like the carrot top of interviewers." Many people thought he was being particularly condescending when he made Romina participate in a magic trick. When she did something wrong, Jessie made sure to tell her about it sarcastically. She then joked that she was going to start crying, and in response he said, "Cry after the interview is over." The reporter clearly could not believe how badly the interview was going, and eventually she said, "You're such a jerk." When the clip came out, fans were quick to point out the fact that Jessie seemed like a bully. Romina ended up writing about the experience and said, "He performs a pretty decent magic trick. Actually, it's a trick my brother would do to me growing up. I knew how it was done, but at this point I just wanted to go and cry. So I oohed and ahed until it was all over." Number 4, Lindsay Lohan. Even though she visited The Late Show in 2013 with the intention of promoting Scary Movie 5, David Letterman spent the majority of the interview talking about her forthcoming return to rehab. This one was particularly bad because as soon as she sat down, Letterman said the actress looked remarkably well in a condescending tone. He then began asking invasive questions about whether or not she steals things and manages her money responsibly. Despite all of her attempts to change the topic of conversation, the host kept going back to the question of rehab, like when she was going to go, why she was going, and how long she planned to stay there. Eventually, Lindsay became so frustrated and just said that they didn't discuss this in the pre-interview, while asking Letterman to focus on the positive. But even though she was clearly uncomfortable, he once again brought it up, and so by the end of the conversation, Lindsay was literally in tears. The interview resurfaced online last year and has since sparked a wave of backlash against the veteran talk show host, who in all fairness has a pretty problematic history when it comes to making women feel uncomfortable on his show. Number 3, Taylor Swift. While on the red carpet at the Grammys in 2015, the singer was infamously told by Entertainment Tonight's Nancy O'Dell that she was going to be walking home with more than lots of trophies, but also lots of men. For a moment there was only an awkward silence from Taylor, who simply glared at the reporter, but then she quickly brushed it off and answered the question directly, saying, "I'm not going to walk home with any men tonight. I'm going to hang out with my friends and then I go home to the cats. Men get me in trouble," which is absolutely hilarious. Then in another interview, Taylor also shut down a German radio host over a question about whether or not she would settle down and have kids with her current boyfriend Joe Alwyn, to which she responded by saying, "I really do not think men are asked that question when they turn 30, so I'm not going to answer that now." Taylor has also had to clap back at sexist critics who claim that she doesn't write her own music, and over the years she's become one of the celebrities most known for her excellent responses in the face of everyday misogyny. Number 2, Tom Cruise. It might not be as disastrous as his interview with Matt Lauer, but Tom's appearance on 60 Minutes Australia makes for tense and uncomfortable viewing. In June of 2005, he was interviewed by journalist Peter Overton to talk about his Scientology beliefs and Hollywood stardom. During the interview, he was asked a series of questions about his ex-wife Nicole Kidman. The couple divorced in 2001 and had 2 kids together, which became estranged from Nicole after their divorce. Eventually, Tom felt the questions had gone too far and chastised Peter for asking them. He said, "You're stepping over the line now. You're stepping over the line. You know you are." When Overton said he was just asking questions that the public wanted to know, Tom replied, "Peter, you want to know. Take responsibility for what you want to know. Don't say other people. This is a conversation that I'm having with you, right? I'm just telling you right now, okay? Just put your manners back in." Peter then apologized so the interview could continue, but years later in 2020, he said that he didn't regret asking the question. Number 1, Samuel L. Jackson. In 2019, the KTLA reporter Sam Rubin began an interview with the actor by asking about his recent Super Bowl commercial, but he was actually referring to an ad for the Kia sedan with Lawrence Fishburne. To say that the mix-up ruined the interview would be an absolute understatement. In response, Samuel hit back by saying, "We don't all look alike. We may all be black and famous, but we don't all look alike. You're busted. You're an entertainment reporter, and you don't know the difference between me and Lawrence Fishburne." Rubin apologized on several occasions and tried to steer Samuel onto a discussion about the revival of RoboCop, which was actually the original reason for the interview, but it was way too late. The actor started roasting him live on air for his supposed unprofessionalism. At one point, Rubin said, "Let's talk about RoboCop," to which Samuel said, "Oh hell no, there must be a very short line for your job." He continued to rip into Rubin for his mistake, asking if he would have trouble telling apart his co-stars Gary Oldman and Michael Keaton. He said, "Do some research, make sure you don't confuse them with those other white actors." And so by that point, Samuel made it abundantly clear that the reporter was not going to be able to recover the interview.
Coming at number 10, we have Diana's passing. With a 90-minute interview being released the same day as the 60-minute interview, it said that Harry will be dropping some never-heard facts surrounding his mother's passing. With the passing of Princess Diana becoming a massive conspiracy theory, many have questioned if her passing was actually an accident or did the royal family have something to do with it. More than 2.5 decades after her tragic passing, passing, Princess Diana continues to make international headlines, with many questions being about her final years and what happened the night she passed away. Many have also questioned who is actually responsible for the accident. While it's said that Diana did have the potential to survive her injuries from the crash, it's also been said that her car had been tampered with. Just 2 years before her passing, Diana agreed to do a television interview with Martin Bashir, where she would reveal her and King Charles' extramarital affairs. As a result, the Queen would then urge Diana and Charles to get a divorce, and Diana would be stripped of her royal title, and her royal security would also be removed, making her unprotected. Diana knew she had enemies, and she felt like she was being watched by the government. It was with these beliefs that made her tell a close friend that she was going to pass away in an accident such as a helicopter, plane, or car crash. With the royal family being pretty tight-lipped when it came to Diana's passing, the fact Harry is willing to bring up some never before heard details, we could expect him to reveal the truth about the royal family being behind it all. So do you think the palace had something to do with the passing of Diana? And let us know in the comments below. Coming at number 9, we have the experience at the heart of the institution. Now, it's extremely rare for a member of the royal family to speak so openly about their experience at the heart of the institution, but it seems like Harry has had nothing to hold back with his experience lately, with Harry stating that he was forced to go public because of the stories being planted against him and his wife. We're definitely probably going to see him dive straight into some of these stories, and he may expose some other royals in the process. Or we might just see Harry expose the facts on why his stories were released instead of everyone else's, with Harry stating before that he hasn't had a pleasant experience working with the royal family, and that Meghan was the one that helped him realize that he wasn't happy working for the family. We could see Harry touch on the fact that his experience hasn't exactly been the greatest, and what he had to do within the heart of the institution that made him feel this way. I mean, it can't be easy being a part of the royal family, but being one of the seniors at the head of the institution probably had to be a stressful period, and now Harry feels comfortable speaking on his own about it. We may see him no longer hold anything back and spill the beans out on what truly happened. Hey my little peaches, are you liking this video so far? If so, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Coming in number 8, opinion on the monarchy. As we learned from Meghan and Harry's documentary, Harry and Meghan have strong opinions when it comes to the monarchy, and it wouldn't surprise me if Harry did in fact give us his true opinions about it, with Harry stating that the family's motto is to never complain and never explain. He could defy all the odds and explain what's truly going on within the monarchy itself. Now, Harry has had ups and downs with the royal family over the years, with him leaving the royal family to follow a completely different path proves that he doesn't really have strong faith in the monarchy. The royal family today serves a different purpose than it did centuries ago, and the members are essentially public servants who represent the UK and promote charity organizations to help citizens, with the royals often spending their days having meetings with these charities and doing engagements to help promote the charities. Although the family does have fans, there are some critics who just don't support them, as no human being deserves more privilege or rights just based on the fact you were born into the right family, and Harry could expose some of these details. Number 7, relationship with the people close to him. Harry hasn't gotten along with his own relatives. When he was a child, it seemed like he and his older brother were inseparable, but as they got older, it's clear that cracks began to form in their relationship. Harry has always felt like he was living in his brother's shadow, and he doesn't exactly envy the responsibility that comes with being the future king of England. But with William being the golden boy, it has caused Harry to feel like he has a lot to live up to. While Harry has tried to bury the hatchet with his family, it seems like the family may never be able to fully forgive and forget the fact that Harry left the royal family behind in order to protect his family. In the interview, we might see Harry talk about where his relationships stand with certain members of the family and why his relationships with the people close to him are still strained. With neither side barely communicating, there definitely continues to be a huge wedge between the royal family and Harry, and while he may not have had the time to say goodbye to his grandmother when it was noted of her declining health, the real reason that he may have stayed overseas during this time might just be revealed. Number 6, wants his father and brother back. With 2 interviews coming out on Sunday, from the previews it said that Prince Prince Harry is hoping to mend the rift with his family, and he is now pleading for harmony with them. Even after him and Meghan Markle very publicly aired their grievances with the royals, with Harry opening up about the ongoing feud while promoting his upcoming memoir, he also stated that he does want his father and brother back in his life. With Harry saying he doesn't believe things had to go the way they did, he also claims his family has been the one to blame for the big issues. Now, it's been said that Charles and William have given Harry zero signs that they want to reconcile. Harry at first tried to deal with the issues privately, however, he also claimed that he had to release his thoughts regardless, because if he didn't, they would just end up being leaked regardless, and it would have made him look like the bad guy. Now, it's never easy being shunned by your family, however, if you really want to repair your relationship with them, then you shouldn't have aired everything out in a manipulating Netflix documentary in the first place. Coming at number 5, comparing Meghan to Diana. It seems like Harry can't stop comparing his wife to Princess Diana. While Meghan may share some admirable qualities, the fact that the couple still tries to compare Meghan's hardships to Princess Diana's hardships just seems completely outrageous. When Diana split with Charles, Harry would note that he witnessed his mother struggling with the media attention and that he didn't want history to repeat itself with his wife, considering the alleged racist harassment that the Suits actor had to face. But to say Meghan faced anything like Diana would be an overstatement, because the truth is no one faced any type of harassment like Diana did. The royal family humiliated Diana to the point they even stripped her royal title. And they didn't just strip her royal title, but they also stripped away her dignity when she was forced to bow in front of her ex-husband, including her 2 kids who had high status within the royal family. In the interview, we will probably see Harry compare Meghan more to Diana as the couple continues to make this narrative that explains they were both treated badly by the royal family. While Meghan definitely has the same type of confidence like Diana did, as she's not scared to stand up to the royal family, she definitely doesn't have the same compassion or empathy, and I feel like in the interview he's just going to dive into what would happen if history was to repeat itself. Number 4, how movements have shaped him. It's clear that Prince Harry has been caught in a cycle of pain and suffering growing up as a member of the royal family. While he has previously compared his upbringing to being raised in a zoo, even after having it tough, he still feels like he shouldn't be pointing fingers and blaming anyone for his hardships. When it comes to parenting, he has experienced some form of pain and suffering because of the pain and suffering that his father suffered, and his realization has caused him to realize that he needs to make sure that he does better so he can break that cycle so it doesn't pass on to his own kids. After Harry came to an understanding of his father's own upbringing and how it shaped him, Harry said he wants to make sure that his kids are raised differently, and I think in the interview we're going to see Harry go through more realizations that will show how certain movements helped shape him into the person he is today. Things we could expect is how dealing with the press made him come to the realization no story within the royal family was ever safe. He could reveal that when stories were released, it made him realize that he couldn't trust certain people with certain secrets, because he came to the realization that when he told these secrets, they would just be released and he couldn't trust anyone. And while he couldn't trust anyone he knew, the only person he could confide in was his wife, but now he'll make sure that his kids can now confide in Meghan and himself for anything they need to talk about, and their secrets will always be safe. Number 3, version of events. It's clear Meghan and Harry and the royal family have different versions of how events actually happen, especially when it comes to Harry leaving behind his royal duties. While many have blamed Meghan as the main reason, Harry has also expressed that he's wanted to leave the royal family since he was in his 20s. Harry never wanted the job, and he actually never wanted to be in the royal family to begin with, especially after he watched what it did to his mom. Recognizing early on that he would never be able to leave, he pivoted his mindset to try to make the most out of his situation, and he started to use his privilege to change the lives of others. With Harry and Meghan claiming that stories were sold to the press by the royal family so that the rest of the members may avoid the scrutiny from the press, we might see Harry bring up what stories the royal family was trying to cover up by using Harry and Meghan as clickbait. With the royal family staff claiming that some had quit because Meghan and Harry's attitude and how they were rude to them, Harry could also finally clear up the rumors and prove that that just wasn't the case. However, we are for sure going to hear about how Harry lost his mother and what his life was really like living in the UK and what it's like leaving to go live in America. Number 2, the color of his children's skin. Seems like Harry and Meghan just can't get enough of using race behind the reason why they left the royal family. And it seems like when it comes to racism and their claims, it mostly revolves around how members of the royal family talked about how much of a scandal it would be if Meghan and Harry's kids were born with darker skin. And don't get me wrong, their claims are definitely shocking and upsetting that a conversation about race is even happening, especially especially behind the palace walls. However, they never seem to come out with physical proof of this conversation, so we don't even know if it happened in the first place. Since the comment was first made, the couple has remained quiet on the person who actually said it, and while the public has pointed fingers at Kate, Charles, Camilla for being behind such a hateful comment, we might just see Harry pin the comment on someone, since in Meghan and Harry's documentary series, when it came out, the couple has been ridiculed by telling the same narratives. However, every time they try to back up their story, they never hit us with stone cold facts, and it makes us wonder if their narratives are actually real, or are they lying just to get attention and sympathy from the public. And coming out number 1 today, we have life outside the royal family. Prince Harry's life has changed a lot since he left the royal family. However, he hasn't really taken the time to talk about what he's been up to lately. Maybe that's because every time he jumps onto an interview, it's with Meghan and it turns into a sob story about her life and how she was ridiculed, rather than Harry and what he thinks about everything going on. With Harry wearing many hats over the years, his life within and out of the royal family has definitely been filled with a lot of highs and lows. While this won't be the first time Harry has spoken out about the royal family, it will be the first time he's spoken out against the royal family by himself. While Harry has lived a pretty interesting life working for the royal family, the military, he's gotten married, and he's even became a father. Harry has proven he's not the prince we all thought he was, and he might just expose what he's truly been up to lately, and he might let us know how he truly feels about not being a part of the royal family any longer.